The next file we're going to integrate TypeScript into will be storage.js. So in here, for the first function, let's annotate type of the return value as void, because this function does not return anything. And of course, let's not forget and change extension of this file on TS. And by the way, we don't have to explicitly specify type for the first parameter should load, because this type contains default value, based on which TypeScript is able to automatically infer the proper type. Let's continue and specify the type of the return value for the next function load state. Here, the type will also be void. But for the next function load from local storage, we have to specify custom type which we're going to create. The type will be called state, because this function is actually used to load the state from local storage and parse it. And the state object has certain shape, which we can see if we scroll this file further. Right here, we see that the state object consists of 3 fields: timeline items, activities, and last, activate. So now we're going to create another interface to describe this type. Let's open up types.ts, where we described all custom types, and export new interface called state. Right here we're gonna paste all those properties, and now let's just define the types for each of these properties. So the first property, timeline items, is actually supposed to store array of timeline item objects, but just because we didn't define the type for timeline item object yet, we're gonna come back to this place in one of the next lessons, and for now let's just annotate the type as any. Once again, using any type is not recommended, but we are only doing it temporarily in here. The next property, activities, stores array of activity objects, and for activity object we already have an interface called activity, so we can specify this interface in here, and also with square brackets, because activities property is supposed to store array of such objects. But the problem is that this interface is actually defined in another module called activities. So to be able to use it in another module, we're going to extract this interface from here and put it inside types.ts and export it from here. And of course, whenever we'll need to use the type activity, firstly we have to import this type. So let's add an import statement right here. And just because activity is just a type, let's explicitly say so while importing this type by mentioning keyword type in here, which will make things easier for readers of our code, because by just looking at this import statement, it's clear that activity is a type. And now we're gonna do the same with another type, activity select option. So let's cut this type from here and paste it to types.ts. Let's not forget and also use export statement right here, and then come back to activities.ts and add this type to the import statement. And finally, let's get back to our interface state, which is inside of types.ts, and let's also add type to the last activate property. This property stores date objects, so the type will be a date. This is a native type in JavaScript. Now let's go back to storage.ts and add an import statement for this type. As always, whenever we're gonna import the type, we're gonna use type keyword in the import statement like this. And there is actually one more function in this file that we can explicitly specify type of the return value for, which is this saveState function. This function does not return any value, so the type will be void. At the end, let's just apply formatting to this file and reorder imports. Link to the source code of this project will be in the video description.